Fighting between the People's Defense Force, PDF, and Myanmar's military junta has escalated sharply in August 2025, with significant developments reported on August 8-9. Battles continue across multiple regions, exemplifying the fragmented and intense nature of Myanmar's civil war. Below is a detailed synthesis of news and analysis from recognized sources covering the most recent events, trends, and implications. Powerful PDF offensives and junta forces under pressure. Reports from August 8 indicate a major offensive by the PDF and their allies in several states and regions. The PDF, often acting in concert with ethnic armed organizations such as the Kachin Independence Army, KIA, and Karenni Nationalities Defense Force, KNDF, has seized or threatened multiple junta positions. For instance, the PDF Joint Force managed to capture significant junta defensive installations, further eroding the military's ability to hold territory in strategic locations such as Bago region and parts of Sagaing. Elsewhere, regional forces, like the KIA, have executed coordinated strikes, overtaking key towns and military outposts. After prolonged engagements, these groups have demonstrated resilience despite the junta's heavy reliance on artillery, airstrikes, and drone warfare. Junta casualties have mounted, while the resistance reports capturing numbers of soldiers and substantial stocks of weapons. Civilians and infrastructure. Humanitarian toll. Clashes have devastated civilian infrastructure, causing widespread displacement. PDF sources reported that the junta carried out attacks on at least 31 hospitals and clinics in 8 states and regions within 4 months leading into August. Such targeting has crippled healthcare provision and emphasized the regime's willingness to use force in areas outside combat. Large-scale destruction of homes, schools, and religious sites has also been documented, particularly where the junta attempts to retake strategically important towns such as Mobai and southern Shan State. Numerous civilians have been killed or wounded by indiscriminate shelling and airstrikes, with thousands more fleeing to escape violence. The humanitarian crisis is compounded by supply blockades and economic collapse, notably across the contested areas in Sagaing, Kachin, and Rakhine states. The junta's military strategy. The junta has concentrated its efforts on retaking lost ground, launching offensives with newly conscripted troops and supporting allied militias such as the PAO National Army. These offensives are accompanied by intense artillery and air bombardment, typically resulting in significant regime and resistance losses. Nevertheless, in most major theaters, the junta has struggled to regain territory and has even lost its control over critical borders and economic hubs. Junta leaders remain steadfast in their refusal to negotiate broad ceasefires, except under conditions that permit responding to attacks on its forces. This is translated into regular airstrikes and alleged breach of truces, especially evident in Kayin State and northern Shan State. Reports describe that in some circumstances, regime forces have struck civilian targets, whether accidentally or deliberately. One of the most severe attacks was on a NUG-administered school in Sagaing region, resulting in dozens of deaths. Junta's strategic isolation and foreign influence. Internationally, the junta remains largely isolated diplomatically, with little substantive support. However, China has emerged as a primary actor behind the scenes. Beijing has recently doubled down on military assistance, pressuring ethnic organizations for ceasefires and brokering temporary agreements, specifically with the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army, MNDAA, and others. Still, these efforts have not substantially shifted the overall momentum, with fighting persisting in northern border zones and resistance groups holding firm. The upcoming Myanmar elections, scheduled for December, have drawn international skepticism. Analysts argue that Chinese involvement is pronounced, raising questions about future legitimacy and the prospects for dislodging entrenched junta leaderships. Complex resistance dynamics, PDF, ethnic armed organizations, and civilian leadership. The PDF, serving as the armed wing of the National Unity Government, NUG, continues to expand its capabilities, coordinating joint operations with legacy ethnic resistance groups, including the KIA, KNDF, and the Arakan Army. Such alliances have been instrumental in recent territorial gains and the development of alternative local administrations. For example, the Arakan Army now controls much of central and northern Rakhine State and is instituting a proto-state model, though it faces allegations of abuses within Rohingya communities and ongoing clashes with junta-aligned Rohingya militias. The NUG claims increasing support from local populations, especially in regions where junta forces have been driven out or debilitated by persistent resistance. Nevertheless, allegations of human rights violations by resistance groups, including file recruitment and collective punishment, pose ongoing challenges to unifying anti-junta initiatives and maintaining popular legitimacy. Humanitarian crisis. Displacement and economic collapse. Violence has forced hundreds of thousands to flee, with the humanitarian situation deteriorating as supplies and aid face persistent blockades. Essential commodities, particularly food and fuel, have soared in price, with evidence of markets tripling costs in the wake of sieges and roadblocks. Aid agencies and international actors are grappling with how to deliver support under the control of non-state actors, as the Arakan Army and PDFs have consolidated local administration or imposed competing blockades. Major trends as of August 8-9, 2025. The PDF and allied ethnic forces, notably the KIA, KNDF, and Arakan Army, have launched successful operations and captured key junta positions in Sagaing, Bago, Shan, and Rakhine states. The junta's reliance on air power and artillery has been matched by growing resistance capabilities, including capturing heavy weapons and strategic bases. Civilian casualties and displacement continue to rise, with healthcare and basic services under systematic attack. China's indirect involvement shapes ceasefire negotiations and influences rebel group tactics, but does not reverse the collapse of junta control in many regions. Humanitarian groups face complex legal and practical obstacles, operating in areas no longer under junta administration, pursuing dialogue with new authorities such as the Arakan Army, and negotiating access to borderlands for aid delivery to 6. Allegations of war crimes and abuses from both the junta and resistance organizations underscore obstacles to post-conflict reconciliation 2-6. Outlook and critical issues. Myanmar's battlefield remains fluid, with junta military losses mounting and resistance forces gaining ground. While small-scale ceasefires brokered by China may localize pauses in violence, resistance ambitions and civil war dynamics follow a broad trajectory of fragmentation and decentralization of power. International attention is divided. ASEAN, diplomatic missions, and humanitarian agencies seek new avenues to engage non-state actors and explore coordinated responses given the junta's waning influence. The December election, though likely manipulated, may alter the leadership composition potentially with Chinese interests in play without restoring credibility or stability. In summary, the PDF versus junta conflict reached new intensities on August 8-9, 2025, with heavy fighting, mounting casualties, and dramatic political implications. Civilian suffering is acute, and the war's outcome remains uncertain as both sides face internal and external pressures to adapt